We've been talking about e-commerce and its growth. With it, it's been creating jobs, and many of those jobs are in the nature of gig workers. This is a segment which has maybe gone from near zero to maybe 500,000 and growing in very short time.
About 60 lakh people are simply the last mile delivery partners.
So you are going for digital training, online payment receipt. So you are going for a digital financial inclusion, because you cannot become a gig worker if you are not able to run those maps or get the training for online payments.
It is only about 8% of the overall workforce which is women.
Delivering something in 45 degrees Celsius is not the same as doing it at 32 degrees Celsius.
Gig ecosystem is now bigger than the staffing ecosystem. This ecosystem, which is already quite sizable, should grow by 4x in 5 years.
This series is supported by Flipkart.
Hi, and welcome to Eye on Retail, a special segment from the core report. So we've been talking about e-commerce and its growth. Now, e-commerce is also now quick commerce, and there are other elements of commerce that we will come to. But the more important point is that the industry has been growing. With it, it's been creating jobs, and many of those jobs are in the nature of gig workers. And that's the segment that we're going to be talking more about today. But as we talk about them, remember that this is an area or a segment which has maybe gone from near zero to maybe 500,000 and growing in very short time. And when anything grows in such short period, it's bound to have a lot of other issues accompanying it, and some of them could be to do with policy, regulation, law, and so on. And it could be to do with the way public perceives these vocations and how they are going, how they will evolve. So, to talk about where we are in the context of e-commerce, but within specific relevance or specific relation to jobs and the gig economy, I'm joined by two experts. First, I'm joined by A. Balasubramanian, a Senior Vice President at TeamLease Services. And I'm also joined by Dr. Arpita Mukherjee, Professor at ICRIER. So, Bala, let me start with you. I think the idea is to first understand where we have reached today in the context of the jobs created, the employment created, and what are the kind of issues that we're grappling with.
Govind, firstly, thank you so much for having me here. And I've been listening to the core report every day for the last year now. I think maybe I skip 2-3 days in a week. So really enjoy your podcast. So having said that, I'll just start off with some macro context setting. Let's see how the numbers stack up. Well, we'll start with the population of our country, which is roughly about 150 crores. Yeah, just rounding off the numbers for simplicity's sake. People who are in the working age, which is broadly understood as 15 to 60, is about 90 crore out of this. And within this 90 crore, the number of people who are actually participating in the workforce is about 55 crore. That's about 60%. This is what is broadly understood as the labor force participation rate, yeah, LFPR. Now, obviously, this is much lower for women than it is for men, because the participation is roughly about half, considering that many women are still employed, though not gainfully, doing household work. So it's roughly about 40 and 80 respectively for women and men, and it averages out to be about 60%. Now, within this 55 crore who are actually working or looking for employment, essentially, only about 8 crore are part of what we call the formal workforce. And what's the broad definition of that? People who are actively contributing towards provident fund. Yeah, for want of a better definition, which means you only have about 15% of the overall workforce which is formal, and about 85% is completely informal. Now, gig is roughly about a crore people. I'm talking about the organized gig workers. I'm not in one sense, even Mandrega is gig. Somebody who's working on some zamindar's land as a farm hand is also a gig worker, right? But they come under the category of casual labor.
And seasonally, right? And it's
Yeah,
seasonal. So
I mean, correct. You call them casual workers. I mean, you work today, you don't work tomorrow, you get paid at the end of the day anyway. You can work on a farm today, work on a Mandrega project tomorrow, and so on and so forth. They're casual workers. Gig workers today is considered to be the people who are working in sort of a semi-formal environment in the larger e-commerce or logistics ecosystem, and that itself is about a crore people. Govind. And of this, about 60 lakh people are simply the last mile delivery partners, the riders. Yeah, the other 40 lakh is a mishmash of variety of roles. It could be let's say drivers who are on cab aggregator platforms. It could be people who are on sales or hospitality, and so on and so forth. Right now, the problem is with this 1 crore people, they are neither formal nor informal. They are formal in a limited sense because they still get their payouts credit to their bank accounts. They're not paid in cash. So the government does have some visibility to how much they earn and so on and so forth, but they are not formal in the sense that they are still not under the purview of social security. Now, that is one of the important aspects of the code on social security, which is yet to be rolled out. It was announced more than 5 years ago, but for various reasons, it got delayed. If that gets rolled out, when it gets rolled out, rather, it's going to be a significant benefit for these people. Now, of course, Arpita, I'm sure will be able to add more to this particular piece. Besides this, what's encouraging to see is that the FM also announced that gig workers would also be brought under the purview of healthcare through the PM ABRY scheme as well. So that's all those are absolutely the right steps to be taken in the right direction.
Got it. Arpita, do you want to go next?
Basically, just to add some kind of a context, our study showed that India is the fastest one of the fastest e-commerce market in the APEC region, and probably one of the largest employer. The confusion begins because every country, including India, designs the labor law based on the ILO conventions. They are pretty old. Gig worker is a very new concept. It is linked to the kind of technology, right? It is technology linked, some kind of a self employment opportunity. If you broaden the way, that it is technology linked self employment opportunity, which is a little bit of a difference from the casual workers. Because in this particular case of a gig economy, if I own a car, I decide that I will provide this service, and it's very different from somewhere a agricultural worker also. So for a long time, countries were confused about whether it is a self employment, informal employment, and how to define it. The problem actually of classifying between formal and informal were more for the developed country, because we had a large informal chunk of workers already in India. They did not have it. So when the gig economy came, it almost looked like they were creating, going back from formal to the informal sector, which was not really liked in that case. So then the code came. The code that Bala referred to is talking about, if you are a self employee, what are the kind of social security benefits are you eligible to? So that's the broader concept in which the gig worker codes and social security has been designed. To do so, the five problems were: first, identify who they are. So then the companies were asked to register, put in the details, they had to put in a GST number, and so on and so forth. So the details of the worker, their GST, their Aadhaar number is now documented, both for the purpose of security as well as for the purpose of an estimation of the number. Then they have to be provided, and they are eligible to social security benefit and standard government processes. So if Ayushman Bharat is applicable to everybody, it is applicable to a gig worker as well. I completely agree with Bala that the law, if implemented, it has been accepted by the cabinet this year, I think in May, around May. But if it is now implemented by the states, the implementation in states vary. If it is implemented by the states, it will be an amazing process. Just to add to one thing which can take our thoughts earlier, when a gig worker is created in some industry, they are actually, there is a confusion between traditional employment, so traditional taxi drivers versus the gig taxi drivers, traditional auto drivers versus the bike. And you may recently see the Karnataka ban on the bike, and the transport union protesting against it is because there is also a complex theory of job losses versus job creation.
I mean, all the laws that you've defined now, I understand implementation at the state level is varied in India, and we'll come to that in a moment. But it would appear from what you said that we seem to have covered most of the ground that one would need to cover for an unorganized group of workers like this. And the sort of addendum question is, how far are we from, let's say, the developed world when it comes to safeguarding the rights of this class of workers?
if we go to the 2020 regulations, and if we go to the four occupational codes all taken together, which came up, they are actually amazing. We are there. When we are not only there, we are there with very, very high standard developed world like the European Union or the US. So we are ready. If we can implement that, we are actually ready to almost sign on labor standards across the world. So in terms of the regulations and in terms of the central government proposition, regulation is perfect, because everybody is taking it from the ILO. They're twisting and turning the ILO. Whatever twisting and turning we have done is good. The problem in our case is twofold. One is the implementation, and second is the enforcement. If the enforcement and implementation doesn't happen, one goes and blame the law. But that's not the case. The law is going to be a good one.
Just to go back to those four codes, so those who are not sort of conversant with this understand. We've talked about healthcare, and the healthcare connect. There's social security benefits, which is that you're essentially like a provident fund. You're putting in money so that you have something when you retire or later on in life. What are the other things that typically one should take care of in any worker and then a gig worker?
See, basically the four code was trying to remove certain barriers which impacted certain groups. Okay, for example, women were not allowed to work at night in many states, and southern states allowed, Haryana did not allow. Like that it was happening. This kind of takes that out. Now you have women gig workers also, so women can be now in many of the professions, although it covers now mining also. In mining also you can have women go down to the mine. So there were certain occupational restrictions on certain categories which will now go away when you talk about the labor force. Social security, safety, all of that has to be that are taken care of. Quality of employment means that you need to be paid for the job that you do. So there is a formal kind of a contract. It is called a contract labor. That's why. So there is a written contract, and you decide to sign on that. So it can be a commission based system, it can be any type of a system of a gig economy. Gig economy doesn't follow a common model, it follows various models of how the gig workers are, uh, I would not call it the word paid, but how they are remunerated, how they earn. So therefore they can keep a portion and then give a commission, or they can take a portion out of the total money. So that depends upon the company and their gig workers. So but the fact remains, there is a contract, a legally enforceable contract, and that is very important. So if I am not paid, I have a legal recourse.
Got it. Bala, now, when we talk about that universe of 6 million gig workers, a lot of them are actually working for you rather than the companies that whose products they're delivering or whose service they're rendering. So take us through the numbers including from your vantage point.
Yeah. Uh, Gig workers, the organized gig workers, are directly remunerated by the platforms for whom they work, by and large. They are not routed through a third party at all because they are direct contractors, direct partners, I would say. So the role of staffing agencies is limited to maybe hiring these people. But end of the day, the day-to-day management, remuneration, incentives are all paid directly by the e-commerce companies slash the logistics companies themselves who employ them directly. And there is a reason for it because we as staffing companies are intermediaries in ensuring that we keep these guys honest, right? That we ensure that all of their statutory dues are maintained, they are paid as per the laws of the land, etc. But when it comes to a gig arrangement, there is actually no such guardrail in place. So there doesn't really it doesn't really necessitate having a third party like us in between at all. That's how it is. Now, at this point in time, if and when the labor codes come into the picture and there is even a modicum of compliance and statutory obligations that need to be met, then there will be a role for organizations like us to act as an intermediary and ensure that those benefits are administered. Out of these 6 million people that we're talking about, pretty much everybody is directly managed and remunerated by the platforms themselves.
Got it. So if we were to now look at what are the kind of gaps that exist, I think we've understood the policy framework and also where the policy framework is delivering and not delivering as yet, and we'll spend some more time on why a little in a moment. But again, I mean, to come back to your vantage point, in in the way you're managing the staffing flows,
Yeah.
uh, what is it that's, let's say, unique, different to from any other industry, and what do you feel would make it more robust from the gig workers' point of view? Particularly, I think the concern is always, what is the future for this?
Yeah.
And even while there is or there is no future, how am I being taken care of in a way that I can ensure my future or secure my future?
No, no, absolutely. I think there is a lot that the gig ecosystem can learn from the staffing ecosystem. The gig ecosystem is now bigger than the staffing ecosystem, right? Staffing ecosystem is about 65 lakh people or so. Gig ecosystem is about a crore people, right? It was zero 15 years ago. Uh, now, the challenge is that if you look at just the staffing ecosystem, at least minimum wages are guaranteed. Overtime is guaranteed. You'll be paid double as per the law of the land. You'll be covered under PF and ESA. A lot of people don't know this. ESA actually gives you unlimited health cover for self and up to seven people in the family. And ESA hospitals these days also empanel super specialty hospitals. Yeah, and these are some of the biggest brands in the country as well. uh, PF does not just give you good assured interest rates which will accrue upon your retirals, etc. Now through the EPFO app itself, we've seen people transacting 100 rupees, they withdraw 100 bucks against their PF as well. Yeah, it's amazing. Post COVID, there is a lot of transformation that's happened, and a lot of people don't know that there is something called EDLI, Employee Deposit Linked Insurance, which acts as a term life policy, which is also being covered as part of the whole, PF umbrella of benefits. This can cover you up to about, uh, I would say, if you take a regular guy who earns about 20K per month or so, uh, if something happens to him, God forbid, then his family will be able to get three times of his annual salary. Yeah, upon his demise, as benefit against this EDLI, which is also covered under PF. Now, I can go on and on like this, but none of these at this point in time are available to the gig workforce. So the point is, it's not just a question of social security being a fanciful term, but it's tangible. Forget about gig workers for a moment. There are several FMCG companies as well who, at this point in time, work with a very large ecosystem of distributor salespeople. Over the last few years, we have formalized that workforce, brought them under our purview, and we are administering their payroll and benefits, and so on and so forth. While this came at a higher cost because they were not being paid these things earlier, they were just paid a flat amount by the dealers and distributors earlier. But by formalizing them now, while the cost has gone up, the benefits are significantly higher than the cost per se. Companies have realized this, and gig workers would also benefit significantly if such benefits are being offered to them as well. But the bigger question here, even in the staffing context, forget about the gig context, is that today we don't really have a jobs problem as a nation. We have a wage problem. Minimum wages in most states in the country are in the range of about 12 to 15K a month. It doesn't really make sense. It's not really in keeping with inflation. We are going through a prolonged phase of wages not really keeping in step with inflation, especially post COVID. And that's really pinching a lot of people. Disposable income is extremely important for an aspiring country like ours. And there are two vectors to this. You need to boost the women labor force participation rate, which is about 40% right now, like I mentioned earlier. And you also need to make sure that you are indexed towards living wages rather than minimum wages, which is also something the government is mulling over. This came out a few months back that they are looking at living wages rather than minimum wages as a concept. If that comes into the picture, then there will be a central sort of a minimum wage which will be indexed to living wages in that in that country, and of course every state and every city can also index over and above that.
Right. So just to take a step back, when we talk about e-commerce, I mean, we've talked about gig workers because that's a visible part of it. There are other workers also. I mean, there's an entire back end, let's say, supply chain management, warehouses, and other parts of the administrative system of delivering or procuring, apart from the pure supply side, which is everything that feeds into the e-commerce platform. So tell us a little bit about that. I mean, or do these numbers cover that as well?
No, they don't. Absolutely not. So, see, if you look at just e-commerce and logistics, the bulk of the workforce can be organized into two buckets. So, you have the warehousing and fulfillment part of it. Then there is the last mile delivery part of it. Now, the warehousing and fulfillment folks are the ones who are typically called the under the roof workers, because that's literally what they
Mm.
are. Then you have the last mile delivery people who are outdoors. Since they are outdoors and the demand can vary significantly on a day to day basis, they are paid on a per piece basis. So you alluded to my entrepreneurial stint as well back in 2015. So it was actually an e-commerce slash logistics company delivering food. At that point in time, today's gig workers were on a fixed salary model. So I had a fleet of dozens of delivery partners who are not exactly partners. They were my employees. I paid them a fixed salary plus incentives. But that's completely evolved into, a per piece rate because of significant density and volumes in each micro market in our country. So people know that even if they are paid on a per piece basis, they are assured of a certain volume every day. Right. So that is how that operates. Now, coming to the former, which is the under the roof workers, Govind, those guys are entirely on a fixed salary plus incentive model. And let me tell you, pretty much every e-commerce and logistics company out there that we work with are 100% compliant. There's no problem at all. They pay minimum wages, they pay salaries on time. By law, you cannot exceed the 10th of the month, the 10th of the next month for the previous month's salary. That is, you will have to pay PF, ESA, etc. as per a certain percentage guideline that's given, statutory bonuses, gratuity, everything is being paid. If I look at that count, that's roughly about one fourth of this count. So about 10 to 15 lakh people exist in that ecosystem, right? Which is that's
Got
how
it.
typically the ratio is. It's about 1:4, 1:5 when you look at the under the roof versus the last mile delivery workforce. But the important distinction, like I said, is these guys are on a fixed salary with all the benefits, but the outdoor guys are completely on gig model.
Got it. Arpita, you talked about the size and scale, and I picked this up from this the Bain report just recently. So India is number three in terms of sales in e-commerce worldwide, and we are number two in terms of number of shoppers. So we are at about 270 to 280 million shoppers, or 270 to 280 million people bought something in the last year online. It could be a service as well, but it's really that's the number. So this also, I mean, I guess gives you the scale, and it's also growing very fast, which means all of this ecosystem that we've been talking about has to keep growing to keep pace with the aspirations of Gen Zers who want to buy quick fashion or whatever that they're going for today. So Arpita, can I come back to you now? So if you were to talk about the remuneration now for a moment, most aspects of the remuneration today, as I understand, are not really fixed. And when we talk about gig workers, I mean, it is linked to productivity or linked to output, but not really fixed. How much of an issue is that?
See, in one part, it is also something that the gig worker may like to have. For example, that's why in our term we call it a self-employment opportunity, because I may like to have a choice that I would work for three companies. I may, or I may just work in between when I'm going to college to earn a extra living. So I go to college, come back, 3 hours I do, or 4 hours I do the e-commerce for my extra living, which pays for my college fees. So this is, you will see these young gig workers, they are doing, somebody is doing a job but still running the service, somebody will so this is the combination in which many people are operating at this stage. So the important part is that it is creating an additional income opportunity. When we were doing the service, in many cases they call it additional income opportunity, like I may be earning something somewhere, but I also want an extra income, and this gives me. And for some it is actually a full day job, but where the job has a flexibility is that if you are a contract worker in a factory, you have to go at a certain point in time and come back. But if you are a contract driver in an e-commerce platform which is providing the transport services, urban transport or urban mobility services, you decide that at this time I am going to take a holiday. It is almost the worker is taking a decision about when he is available, he logs into the app, and when he is not available. So this is a very important point. The second point that Bala raised is also like why this category is kept a little flexible is because the demand is not always the same. During Durga Puja or Diwali, you have a very high demand. During Christmas, but not all year round. So you do not need to really full time employ all those people. The same model operates even in manufacturing. During certain period, they take in more workers, and in certain period, they have less workers. So these are the things that we need to think about, because um, um, the employment pattern have to also follow the business and the demand. And now the third point that I always try to put forward is that there is a debate also whether there is a job displacement or a job creation, and our study always shows that there is a job creation. And you kind of gave the answer that the demand is growing. So because the demand is growing, population is growing, and reaching out to the population is important, whether I need more and more services online, or whether more and more people needs urban mobility. Okay, so therefore there is always a room for growth. And what we estimate is, at least in the next 5 years, if Indian economy is growing at this rate, it's a double digit growth.
So when you say double digit growth, you're talking about the number of jobs being created
The
by
number of
e-commerce.
jobs, the sector is growing, because if the economy is growing, number of jobs is related to the growth of the sector. So if the Indian economy is growing at say 6 to 7%, 6.4%, what it is projected, then the sector is going to grow, and so does the jobs in the sector.
Which would mean, all other factors apart, this as a sector in terms of job creation is growing faster than most other sectors in the economy.
Yes, it is. Bala is better to place to answer, but our study shows yes.
No, no, absolutely bang on, Arpita, with you on it. So, our research also indicates that, Govind, this ecosystem, which is already quite sizable, should grow by 4x in 5 years. That is unprecedented, and I completely agree with what Arpita said as well. In general, there is fear when there is a certain vector or a certain profile that grows significantly, that it's probably displacing potentially other jobs, equal in number and maybe better in quality as well. Neither of those allegations is true in this case. This is a completely new vector which is genuinely creating new jobs. And what is happening is, increasingly we are seeing that a lot of people who were erstwhile working on farms or working as casual labor are now shifting to gig work, which is like a mezzanine layer right now en route to fully formal employment, because gig work itself could become fully formal in the near future. Even if it doesn't, it's still a mezzanine layer which is still much better than what they have had until now, right? India should definitely industrialize and also servicize itself a bit more. We still have, unfortunately, a very large chunk of our workforce on farms. It's extremely unproductive, it's extremely low paying for the same reason as well.
May I also add a point, that when you are talking about a gig worker, you have to look at two core concepts which we miss out. Is one is their digital training. So you are going for digital training, online payment receipt. So you are going for a digital financial inclusion, which is actually one of your UNSDG goals. So that kind of adds to Bala's point. Like, you are not only shifting workers out of this road, you are offering them certain level of training, because you cannot become a gig worker if you are not able to run those maps or training, get the training for online payments, run the systems. So you are uploading information just in time. So those kind of things, the IT training that is happening to this class of population, which would otherwise be fairly unemployable, is also a very interesting way to look into the gig workers.
Correct. And as we look ahead, a couple of things, and let me pick up first gender. And we've referred to gender in two or three points now. Bala, can I come back to you? So India's labor force participation for women is actually amongst the lower. I mean, it's not as high as it could be. There are countries, even like Saudi Arabia, which have been higher than us, or we are close now. But I mean, so data may be disputed or data may be questioned. But the point is that it's not as high as it should be. How can this sector contribute to higher women participation in the workforce, and what could be the trajectory going forward?
Oh, there is a long way to go for this sector to contribute towards women labor force participation going, because unfortunately, like I said, roughly India has about 60% overall LFPR. Among women it is 40 and men it is 80, right? In this sector it is 8%. That's it. If you look at the recent report that we published about 3-4 months ago, that is woefully low, right? Be it the e-commerce or quick commerce or logistics ecosystem, it is only about 8% of the overall workforce which is women. In fact, it's higher than the 4 or 5% that it was about 4 or 5 years back. It's doubled, you can say, but on an incredibly low base, right? Now, the problem really is that this is physically demanding grunt work. It doesn't really yield itself to the kind of work where women can
Sure.
actually far exceed or excel what men do. On the other hand, if you look at another ecosystem, you can say it is kind of an adjacency. EMS, electronic manufacturing services. We have a lot of contract manufacturers in India who make who make iPhone components, assembly, and so on and so forth. There are several factories where 80% plus of the workforce is women. They are nimbler. They don't take as many sutta breaks. They are able at multitasking. In general, they are far more productive than men. They get paid the same, right? So I mean, it just makes a great business case to employ women over there. Here, it is not like companies have not tried. If you look at the warehousing or the e-commerce ecosystem or the logistics ecosystem for that matter, not for lack of effort, but there are certain simple aspects where we miss out on. For example, you have to work 2 3 shifts, which means it's a 24 by 7 operational engine, and it doesn't really feel very safe for women to work there either. If women are employed over there, obviously at the same wages, they'll be better. They'll be more productive. There is no question about it. It is just that it doesn't yield itself to it. I can give you so many examples from the staffing context itself, Govind. If you look at the same mall, you will have a consumer durables and electronics chain. You will also have, let's say, a lifestyle beauty and cosmetics chain right next door. Mix of women in the former is about 10%. The mix of women in the latter is about 80%. So the product category also matters. They generally are more attracted towards selling beauty, cosmetics, lifestyle apparel, etc., than they would in terms of selling electronics. Pay is more or less the same. Work hours are obviously the same. Location is exactly the same as well. So, product category, very important variable. Social security and wages, extremely important. Thirdly, most importantly, working conditions and environment in general.
I have been interviewing a few women, bike drivers, and they have pointed out four or five things. One is that, if the vehicle is a commercial vehicle, if it is a yellow number plate and they buy a, say, scooty, women tend to buy more scooty than bike. And if it is a yellow number plate, it is a bit of a kind of shade. So they are more keen to have a white number plate bike system. So that's something they always talk about, that I'm happy to pay the transport department a fee, but look at other countries in the APEC region which is going for, they don't classify a bike as being something which is owned and something which is looking as like traditionally being a yellow number plate. Secondly, the yellow number plate has traditionally, the transport associations associated with it is a traditionally a men feed. Even the transport associations don't have a women representative. They do not bring up the case of a woman. Suppose if a women taxi driver is harassed by her passenger, the transport associations often come back and say that you should not have actual taken up this profession. So they get a negative feedback if they face a problem. Third, of course, the main problem is on the road. If they are on the road all day long, the public utility systems are very, women need a proper toilet and women need a proper system. Even they, many of them said that in Delhi, they said that even if it is a paid system, we are very happy with it as long as it is clean and paid. So that is one thing. Fourth is the weight. When you are in a bike or an auto, you do have to carry a certain amount of weight when you are providing. So for some women, this can be an issue, the weight can be an issue, and that is mostly for the older women who prefer to have a more stable transport system like a four wheeler rather than a two wheeler. So these were the problem that came out in our survey. Having said that, most of the women who have been doing this job said that they are happy about it. There are institutes which are providing training, but there has to be, NGOs have to come forward and offer more training to the women. So the women first have to learn how to drive, then they have to have an access to the vehicle, then they come into the gig economy. So these processes have to be streamlined. So somebody helps a women to learn to drive, somebody helps a women to actually apply for and get a vehicle on, say, with a loan or something, and then make a business case out of it. So that process is happening, few NGOs are doing it, but the process is slow, it can be scaled up a lot.
I'm going to come back to a couple of issues as we look ahead, but I think the white number plate is a very interesting observation and insight, because if you fix that problem, you could fix many other problems which are, I mean, maybe more difficult or more challenging when you see it, but maybe easier to handle, particularly if you're more creative about it. Okay. uh, the Bala, the question that I have for you is, we've talked about, let's say, the ecosystem now. We've talked about people who are already gig workers. You've pointed out the distinction between under the roof and out in the field. Now, what is the transition like? I mean, so today people become gig workers. Is the transition for them, if they desire so, if they, let's say, don't, I mean, if they are looking, as it happens inevitably in India, they become more permanent in these kind of roles. Is the transition from out in the field to under the roof, from under the roof to something more aspirational? What have you been seeing?
See, Govind, it's not like under the roof job is higher in the pecking order compared to a gig work. Not at all. They are completely different, right? And there is 100% fungibility between the two roles. There are people who consciously choose to be gig workers purely because of the freedom that they enjoy in it. They literally work like proper freelancers, like micro entrepreneurs, right? Today he is working on platform A, tomorrow he can go to platform B, and day after tomorrow platform C. The average gig worker will have at least 5 registrations at the very least. Yeah. So it's a matter of choice for them, and also for many other people, they cannot really showcase any other skill through which they can get a higher paying job than this, unfortunately. Yeah. And trust me when I say this, there is a severe supply side problem as well. Even among the under the roof workers, the attrition is 20% a month. Imagine that in 5 months your entire workforce washes through your system, and this spikes even more so around festive season. Ironically, festive season is when you want more people, but that's when they would want to go back home as well, because we have a significant percentage of migrant workers, especially in the southern parts and the western parts of the country, may go back to north and eastern parts of the country, which is where they originally are from. So managing this workforce and even managing the outdoor workforce, both are extremely challenging. Managing the outdoor workforce is, in that sense, slightly easier, I would say, because they largely tend to be local guys, not really migrants so much, because the outdoor workforce tends to interact directly with the end consumer. So language becomes a challenge. Yeah. So they tend to be local guys because, again, local guys are more likely to have their own vehicle there and stuff, and they won't have a language challenges, etc. While the attrition is 40% per month among the outdoor workers, there is a large supply pool available as well, and more people are coming into this ecosystem. But the under roof workforce is actually a bigger challenge, and that becomes a bottleneck as well. If the attrition spikes there, you will find that either you are stuck with a glut of supply or you have an absolute paucity of supply, because you need people there to keep moving the goods, yeah, through the system. So coming back to your question of stability and growth path and all that, the companies are 100% all in on it. Going back to Arpita's point, there is significant investments being made in training them and making them more productive, because it's a win-win situation. If the same guy is able to do more for me, not only will I get more out of it, I'll be in a position to pay him more as well. But unfortunately, we are stuck in a I'll once again take a step back and go to the macro context. We are a very large economy with a very small GDP per capita, right? We are ranked at what, 135, 140 or so when it comes to GDP per capita, but we are rank 3, rank 4 when it comes to the overall GDP, right? So the income per capita is simply downstream from the GDP per capita. So if the productivity levels go up, we'll be able to pay them more as well. So it is in the best interest of these companies to train them, upskill them, and provide them with a career path, which is what they are trying to do. In fact, you would have a bigger or a longer or a better career path by starting off at this level than you would even in the knowledge economy. In the knowledge economy, entry level job salaries have been stagnant for what, 20 years ago. My first job with an ITS company was 17 years ago. I don't want to name the company. They are paying the exact same salary now. Yeah. And though the future of those jobs look bleaker than ever before now. But I wouldn't say that's the case here. I have personally come across at least half a dozen instances of people who started off by being a modest packer slash loader in a warehouse, who then became eventually a shift in charge, then a warehouse in charge, then an area manager and a regional manager, who is now earning 10 times, 10 to 15 times of what he earned back then when he started out as as an average packer. So there is definitely a career path, but the problem really is that this pyramid has an extremely wide base and a very, very narrow top. Very few people eventually do make it. Yeah. So I think the single biggest lever for us, rather than giving them a career path, is to help them become more productive and hence be able to pay them more. That's it. For the same job, if you are in Europe, you will anyway get 7 times to 10 times more, right? Why are we not able to pay that much here? Simply because it's a question of productivity. Yeah. So forget about career, it's about money. End of the day.
Okay. Arpita, as we sort of wind up, one is, if I'd ask you to wrap up where we stand on the regulatory legal framework. You've talked about the fact that some of our laws, or most of our laws, are world class right now. The problem is, of course, how it goes down to the states and how the states implement it. So if I can ask you to go over that once more, and where we give us a sort of status report on where we are. The second is, I don't know whether you want to add anything further on the gender side, but if we were to look ahead, one of the things that I see, and it does concern me, is that working conditions themselves are changing. There is climate is a challenge, and we are seeing increasing number of days which are, let's say, hotter. There are more heat waves than ever before. There's more extreme rainfall than ever before. So every form of weather condition that we know of is being presented in a more extreme fashion than we've seen it before, which makes people who are working outdoors, it could be any industry, gig workers are one part, construction workers, other workers, are also affected. So if you have any thoughts on that.
So let me come to the first point. See, laws in India is evolving fairly fast. As I told you that the occupational codes have been approved in May. On 1st of July this year, actually, if you look at the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, they have come out with a motor vehicle aggregator guidelines. They have exactly talked about the points that I am talking about, is that, you can have a white number plate. You can have those options where you pay some amount of fee to the transport department, so that the transport department, the money they makes between the two number plates, can be made, as well as people can be able to use the white number plate, which is now actually allowed in many of the services, like food delivery services, is not allowed in human mobility. So there is a problem. But the human mobility part, or some services, are easier for women to take care of, because they do, then the services which require physical load, so maybe carrying a parcel. So there are certain areas where women can come in, and that needs to be thought through. And the laws are now allowing women to work, because along with that code, there is also another code which is allowing women to work at night in different vehicles. So if all of these are implemented, the problem here is that, the center can come up with a model. The occupational codes are the model. Now in the terms of the implementation, first of all, states have to agree to implement. That's the first point. Second point is, if they agree to implement, then the twist and turn, that's a even dangerous thing. And the third thing is that, even if they twist and turn, each of them have their own minimum wage rate, and this minimum wage rate is also not being revised, as Bala pointed out, and that's the real issue. So when my money is not coming, when the basics is not revised, it is, you cannot expect suddenly the platforms to pay more, because everybody else is paying less. So there has to be a minimum wage into the market that is kind of pegged to the cost of living. That's what Bala is trying to say, that it has to be a inflation linked, cost of living linked wages, which needs to be thought through, accordingly designed. So that's not as easy to say at the state level, because in a state like Maharashtra, you will have a tier 2, tier 3 city, and you have Mumbai. The cost of living is not same across these cities. So there are a lot of policy issues that probably may need attention, and we may need to we need to think about it and provide kind of guidelines.
Bala, delivering something in 45 degrees Celsius is not the same as doing it in 32 degrees
Yeah.
Celsius. So,
Yeah.
and I'm still struck by the fact that, every year, subsequent year now, we are seeing more, days, more days with high temperatures than otherwise in summer. So, is this something that concerns the industry at all? If so, how? From your vantage point, I know
No,
you're
absolutely.
not an
No,
industry
it
man.
does. It does. Climate change is real, and we'll have to deal with it. Now, what companies are doing is, and you must have noticed this as well, subtly, um, increasingly, you would have now seen early morning deliveries and late evening deliveries, right? Order now and get this delivered before 8 a.m. Order now
Mhm.
and get this delivered by 11 p.m. So orders are now getting more and more clustered towards early morning and late evening hours so that you escape the heat, which usually peaks between 10 and 3. A lot of deliveries don't take place at that time. Also, if you look at restaurant deliveries as well, on weekdays it's largely late evening slash night deliveries that take place, where again you escape the heat. Yeah, there is a certain volume of lunchtime
Sure.
deliveries as well, which you will have to deal with. But again, on weekends as well, a big proportion happens towards the evenings as well. So if you look at be it hyperlocal delivery or scheduled e-commerce deliveries, now increasingly the volume of deliveries happening in the middle of the day has gone down, COVID. So that's one way of dealing with it. Secondly, companies are also providing hyper local cooling spots as well. I mean,
Yeah.
there are these sort of small places, you can say, like, which are at the size of depots, so that people can congregate and chill out and spend some time hanging around there, etc. They have some basic facilities over there for them to rest. While they are supposed to be outbound workforce and partners, they still are taking efforts to ensure that there is some place for them to cool off.
Got it. Okay. We've run out of time. Bala and Arpita, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. I think you've given us a lot of stuff to think about and to focus on as we look at how the e-commerce industry, which is already very large, is going to go further, and even as it grows within the many sectors that we've talked about. And thank you both for your insights in that regard. So it's been great talking to you on this special segment of the Core Report.
It was our pleasure, Govind. Thank you so much for having me over.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Govind.
Thank you.
This series is supported by Flipkart.